Yeah, hi. In this tutorial, we are continuing with the Matplotlib session. So to start with, first we are going to import the libraries. I'm importing NumPy, Matplotlib, and Pandas library. Then I'm importing data from a file, which is an Excel file, and using this pd.read underscore Excel function, I'm reading data from the Excel file and storing it in a data frame named as Sachin. So basically, this data frame contains all the data from this Excel file, and what it contains, we can see it by just displaying first few records. So I'm doing data frame dot head and 3 within the parenthesis. It means to display the first three records of the data frame. Okay, so what we get is the number of basically this data contains the centuries scored by Sachin against different countries, and the third column represents the format, whether he scored century in the test match or a one-day match, and on which ground actually he scored the centuries, and on which particular date he scored the century. So this data basically contains all the centuries scored by Sachin in his career across both one days and test matches. Okay, so let's say our problem is we want to find out uh, basically a comparison of number of centuries scored by Sachin in ODIs and in test matches across different countries. So this is the kind of output we want to generate. That is how many centuries he scored against a given country, and how many were one days and test centuries. So basically we want a comparison of centuries scored in one days and test format across the different countries he play against. So let's see how we achieve this graph. So first and foremost, since we have to do a grouping against using the column against and format. So against actually represents the country against which he played, and format is the format of the match. It was a test match or the one day match. So what we're doing is we're saying Sachin dot group by, so that is data frame dot group by, and we are grouping on the basis of country he played against and the format. And from there I'm selecting one column score, and just using the apply function and finding out the length of the score, that is the number of centuries he scored against that particular country in that given format. And then because the output will be having these two against and format as an index, so I'm just resetting the index using reset underscore index function. What it will do, it will add these two indexes as columns to the output, and then I'm renaming the column score as the centuries, number of centuries he scored. So this is, and this we are collecting it in a data frame as df, and if we see the first few rows of the df, it looks like this. So basically, this tells the number of centuries scored by Sachin in against a country and the format. So he scored 9 centuries against Australia in ODI, 11 against Australia in Test matches in his career. Similarly, against Bangladesh, England, and so on. Now, out of these, when we observe, we found that there were two countries which actually were non-test playing nations. So we want to exclude those countries for now, because we want to do comparison between test matches and one days matches, since these two countries never had the test status, so Sachin never played against them in a test match. So we are just excluding these countries. So these countries are Kenya and Namibia. So I'm excluding these countries. So basically what I'm doing here is select all the records. If we just use this condition, what it means is, uh, select records where against country is Kenya or against country is Namibia, and then we are just inverting this condition using this tilde. So basically what it means, select all those records where this condition holds false. So whatever we get, we store it in the data frame underscore new, another data frame. So basically it will contain all those records from this data frame except for Namibia and Kenya. Now we have to do the coding to actually achieve that plot. So to start with, again, we are saying plt.subplots and storing the result in the figure and the axis. We are setting the width of the bar, let's say 0.40. Okay, now we have to extract the country. So if you see in this particular data frame, we have a country repeated twice, one for the one day format and other for the test match format. So we want to find out unique country names. So how do we do this? We just simply say data frame underscore new and against was the column name. And we are starting from index 0 and we are making a jump of 2. So it's like Australia, then make a jump of 2, go to Bangladesh, then another England and so on. So basically we are skipping the duplicate country name. So in this way we get all the country names and we are storing it in countries. Now we want to generate an index, which is basically nothing but uh, a numpy array from 0 to the length of the countries minus 1. So that is starting from 0 to, since we have I think 10 countries, so it will be like 0 to 9. It's just an index. So basically to represent each country, so 0 for the so 0 index for Australia and 1 index for Bangladesh and so on. So that's the whole purpose of having it. Now we have to do the actual plotting. So we are just saying ax dot bar, that is do the bar plot, and on the x-axis I'm specifying this index, and on the y-axis it is a centuries column which contains this number of centuries, and then I'm just specifying the width of the bar, and the data we are getting from data frame underscore new. That's the new data frame that we just created, and we want to first plot for the ODI century, so we are putting a filter condition that select data where the format is only ODI, and we are just going to label this particular bar as ODI because this contains the ODI data. Now similarly we'll plot another bar which is for the test century is code in the test matches. So it is ax dot bar again. Now this time, because we want two bars side to side, that is next to each other. So in the x-axis, I'm just simply doing index, whatever index we had created earlier, and we am just adding width to it. That is that much space it should leave, and then it should create another bar. And the height of the bar is represented by the centuries. Width is the width of the bar. And again, from the data, I'm just selecting only that data which belongs to the test matches, and I'm just labeling that particular data in the form of bar using the label which says label equals to test. Now, in if you see in both cases, we are because whenever we do a plotting in the Matplotlib, it actually returns an object. So I'm just capturing the object in rect1 and rect2, just in case if we need for the later for further editing. Okay, now we have to just simply display the ticks. So what we are doing is we are displaying the ticks on the x-axis using index plus width by 2, and for each tick we are setting the label as the country name. So first we have to create those tick marks. When I say tick marks, then this tick I'm talking about, this that small tick that you see, yeah, and then we have to set the labels for these corresponding ticks. So these labels actually are the country names, and I'm doing the rotation of 90 degree. It means instead of horizontal, it should be displayed, the country name should be displayed 90-degree angle, that is vertically, so that one country name should not overlap the other country name. Okay, so and after that, what we are doing, just setting the y label, which is the centuries, that is number of centuries is code, and setting the title of the chart, that is it's actually a comparison of such centuries made by Sachin in ODIs and test matches against each country. We are displaying the legends, so we have two legends, one for the one days and other for the test matches. We are just displaying the legends that you see here, ODI and test. Now, another thing to notice, we are displaying numbers. Or if I just do up to this much, we'll just simply get the bar chart with the bars and legends and x-axis and the y-axis. Now, additionally, I also want to display numbers at the top of the bar, which represents which actually represents the number of centuries of that bar. So we are achieving this by some additional code. So this function we have written, which is called as auto labels. So earlier, what we did when we were plotting these bars, we had actually captured the output in the form of an object rect1 and rect2. Rect1 represents the object for ODIs and rect2 represents the object for test. Now using these two objects, we can further edit their properties to actually find out the height of each bar and then display the text at that particular height. So how we are doing this? This is a function in which we will pass one object which is rects basically. So and for e and then we are looping through it. So for each rectangle within this rects object, find out its height. So we can get height simply using this function rect.get underscore height. And then once we know the height, okay, what we have to do is just simply display the text. So we can display the text using ax.text function, and we specify the uh, x-axis and the y-axis accordingly. X-axis is determined by this particular rect.getx plus rect.get underscore width divided by 2. So at the x-axis position and the width of the rectangular bar, we are just making it half, and then display that forms the x-axis, and on the y-axis we get the height, and then we are just simply displaying the value of the integer height, that is the value which represents the number of centuries scored by that against the country in that particular format. So we are just calling this function for these two rectangles, rectangle 1 and rectangle 2, which basically this is for the ODI and this is for the test, and it actually displays the text at the top of each of the bar. So this gives a nice comparison between Sachin's career in terms of the centuries he scored throughout his career, including both ODIs and tests. And as we can see, he was particularly dominant against Australia. He scored overall 20 centuries, 11 in the test matches and 9 in the ODIs. Followed that, he was very successful against Sri Lanka as well, scoring 9 test centuries in his career against Sri Lanka and 8 against ODIs, and so on. So yeah, so now moving on, we move to the next chart, that is the pie chart.